Hello viewers, how are you? I hope you must be fine. Today we are going to read a poem, but before that let us do an activity. Let me ask you a question. What do you see on the screen? Yes, it is the picture of a tiger. So dear viewers, today we will read a poem prescribed for class 12th from NCERT textbook with the title Aunt Jennifer's Tigers. We have divided this poem into two parts for easy understanding. In the first part, we will try to focus on the general information about the poem, and in the second part, we will try to understand and paraphrase the poem line by line. So, let us decide the learning objectives for today's session first. Today, we will be able to understand setting or background of the poem, get to know the poet of the poem, appreciate the rhythm and tone of the poem and main theme of the poem, and last, identify and appreciate the literary devices. Let us start with a prediction game. Let us predict about the poem. Take a piece of paper and try to make a grid on the screen and try to fill the grid with the words that come to your mind, answering the questions on the screen. What do you think the poem is about? What could Aunt Jennifer's tigers refer to? Yes, your answers might be that it is a pet or a painting or a wall hanging or a toy or anything else. So, some of your words regarding prediction about poem are right. This is a poem about a lady named Aunt Jennifer and her tigers, but it is a symbolic poem with hidden meaning. Now viewers, look at the slide on the screen. Can you find and fill in the blank by telling the name of the poem that you have read in class 10th by Adrin Rich? Yes, you guessed right. The name of the poem is Trees, a short symbolic poem focusing on the movement of trees that are initially indoors but seeking to escape to freedom in the forest. The trees represent nature, but also the nature of being womanhood in particular. Similarly, can you tell me the name of lesson with the theme Gender Equality from class 11th NCERT English textbook? Yes, you are absolutely right if you have guessed it as Mother's Day. So, we can conclude that the poem we will talk about today is also a symbolic poem with the similar theme. Dear viewers, it is time to talk about the poet Adrin Rich. She was born on May 16th, 1929 and died on March 27, 2012. She was an American poet, essayist and feminist, credited with bringing the oppression of women to the forefront of poetic discourse. She prefers to use the term women's liberation rather than feminism. Viewers, now as we know a little about the poet, it is time to discuss the background of the poem. The poem is written on the status of American women in 1940s and 50s. It was the time of World War II. All the jobs were war related. All the men were in war zones and had left the space for women to be filled in. The jobs considered to be suited for men were taken by women in factories, banks, both manual and intellectual sort of work. When the war was over, the men returned and women were told that their position was in home. At the same time, Cold War propaganda was also going on with big debate on communism versus the fruits of capitalism and democracy. And all this made Adrin Rich revolt in form of poem. Dear viewers, look at the pictures on the screen. These pictures present the gender construction in 1940s and 50s in America. These images are the stereotype images of cultural icons of that time. June Cleaver, Donna Reed, Harriet Nelson, who were quintessential white middle class housewives who stayed at home. So, these pictures show that through such images, society was trying to create a stereotype for American women, and all this made Adrin Rich revolt. Dear viewers, do you see disparities in the wages of men and women around you? Yes, we see despite the rule of equal wages for same work done by women sometimes are exploited. The picture on the screen shows how the things are changing because of awareness about the issues on gender equality raised by feminists in their literature to make people aware. Now, let us do a brainstorming on the theme of the poem and try to understand the issue of gender equality in sports. The picture of Indian men and women cricket skipper were in news because BCCI has announced equal pay for men and women cricketers. So, viewers, all the issues are reflected in this poem with symbols. So, let us discuss the theme. The first theme is women emancipation, conflicts, issues and struggles that a woman has to face in the male chauvinistic society, evils of patriarchal or male dominant society, persecution and oppression due to the patriarchal system, and importance of art, because art is the only place where one can escape to feel ease and express oneself. After the theme, let us see what is the tone and style of the poem. The tone appears to be positive and cheerful when the poet describes the tiger, but it becomes sad and dull at times of describing Aunt Jennifer. Aunt Jennifer's Tigers by Adrin Rich is a 3-stanza poem that is separated into stanzas of 4 lines with a simple rhyme scheme of A, B, B, with the couplets changing end sounds from stanza to stanza. So, after we have discussed the background theme, the tone and style of the poem, it is time to discuss the symbols used in the poem. Look at the slide on the screen. The major symbols used in the poems are tigers, Aunt Jennifer, wedding band and embroidery. Here tigers are the symbol of freedom and fearlessness. Aunt Jennifer is the symbol of victim of male oppression. Wedding band is the symbol of marriage and embroidery is the symbol of creative expression. So, viewers, in the first part of this poem, we have discussed about the poet, background of the poem, theme, style, tone of the poem and symbols used in the poem. Now, it is the second part. We will discuss vocabulary and paraphrasing of the stanzas. Hope you have enjoyed the first part related to the background information about the poem and the poet's perspective of writing the poem. Now, let us move to the next part. Dear viewers, who do you think is the speaker of the poem? The speaker is anonymous, who may either be he or she. As the poem is on the issue of gender equality, poet has not made it clear. So, for the poet, the focus on the plight of a married woman is important and not the speaker. Before moving ahead, let me ask you something. Who are told to do adjustment after marriage? Before coming to any answer, let us explore who has to change name, who has to change dress, who has to change home and who has to change identity after marriage. We all know Most of the time it is the women. Now let us explore it in this poem. Let us read the poem line by line before trying to go for its explanation. I am reading it for you. Aunt Jennifer's tigers prance across a screen, bright topaz denizens of a world of green. They do not fear the man beneath the tree, they pace in sleek chivalric certainty. Aunt Jennifer's fingers fluttering through her wool find even the ivory needle hard to pull. The massive weight of uncle's wedding band sits heavily upon Aunt Jennifer's hand. When aunt is dead, her terrified hands will lie, still ringed with ordeals she was mastered by. The tigers in the panel that she made will go on prancing proud and unafraid. Now it is time to find out the new words and literary devices used in the poem. First, let us discuss vocabulary. Some of the new words in the poem are prance, that means walk or move with high springy steps. Another word is denizens. Here it is an animal that lives or is found in a particular place. Another word is sleek, that means elegant. Ordeal here conveys the meaning of extremely severe test or experiences. The last word fluttering here means to move in quickly irregular motions as if being agitated. Now let us see the literary devices used in the poem. Anaphor is used in the line they do not, they pace in, use of the same word in two consecutive lines. Metaphor is used to describe the yellow color of tigers. Alliteration is used in finger fluttering and prancing proud. Similarly, hyperbole is used in massive weight of wedding band. Let me read the first stanza once again for you. Aunt Jennifer's tigers prance across a screen, bright topaz denizens of a world of green. They do not fear the man beneath the tree, they pace in sleek chivalric certainty. Now let us do paraphrasing of this first stanza. The first stanza talks about Aunt Jennifer and her love for embroidery. She is weaving a piece of cloth with tigers jumping around in a world of green, that is nature. With the use of metaphor, she had tried to focus on the bright yellow color like the topaz tone of the tigers. The dense jungle has green visuals in the backdrop. The tigers, full of gentlemanly mannerism, are brave, majestic kings of the forest who are not afraid of man. In these lines, the poet gives a sense of contrast between Aunt Jennifer and her tigers. Aunt Jennifer is fearful of the man in her life, whereas her tigers are unafraid and fearless. Let me read the second stanza before explaining it. Aunt Jennifer's finger fluttering through her wool find even the ivory needle hard to pull. The massive weight of uncle's wedding band sits heavily upon Aunt Jennifer's hand. In the second stanza, Aunt Jennifer's fingers are trembling with fear as she embroidered the fearless tigers on the cloth. She is creating something that is absolutely in contrast with her own self. So, she is excited and afraid. She is afraid that her husband would not approve of art in form of fearless tigers. With the use of hyperbole about her burdensome marriage, she is conveying that she has worn her out, and she is so tired that she finds it difficult to pull the ivory needle with her fingers. Her fingers are also weighed down by uncle's wedding band. Again, use of hyperbole. She does not consider the ring as hers even years after her marriage. She is now tired and feels trapped because of the burden of the obligations of married life. Now, I am going to read the last stanza before explaining it. When aunt is dead, her terrified hands will lie, still ringed with ordeals she was mastered by. The tigers in the panel that she made will go on prancing proud and unafraid. The third stanza is about the prediction of her future. The poet says that when aunt is dead, her hands, which were a part of her terrified existence, shall lie by her side. They will also be lying about her existence as an obedient wife, as the fingers had created brave tigers in contrast to her real character. The poet here wants to convey that although her husband's torture had been able to cow her down, but it could not kill her mind, which wanted freedom. Unfortunately, her ordeal will not end with her death, as the burdensome ring will remain on her even after death. However, her desire to freedom will remain alive through her tigers, which will continue to move about on the screen. Now, as we have done the paraphrasing of first, second and third stanza, let us recapitulate the poem. The poem Aunt Jennifer's Tiger was written by Adrin Rich, who is one of the significant figures of feminist movement during the 20th century. The title is apt as it talks about an old married lady who is trapped in a male dominated marriage and her creative art which helps her to escape from her unhappy marriage. The poem has been divided into 3 stanzas having 4 lines each. In the first stanza, the poet explains the nature of tigers that are bold, fearless and free. In the second stanza, the poet explains art as medium of escape from ordeals in life. Aunt Jennifer is totally opposite of her art, as she is trapped, frightened and pain bearing. The last stanza compares the life of Aunt Jennifer as mortal and that of her art which will remain eternal. The poet concludes that though Aunt Jennifer has suffered throughout her life because of her failed marriage, will suffer in her afterlife as well. Her art will remain fearless, proud and everlasting. When we read this poem again and again, we find that the poet is indirectly referring to the power of art. For the poet, women can escape from their unhappy life by using their capabilities. Unlike humans, art has no boundaries or limitations. So, basically the poet is trying to encourage women to raise voice against their slavery by expressing themselves in arts. So, dear viewers, hope you have enjoyed this session and will read the poem again for a deeper understanding of its global meaning with focus on its theme and symbols used. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.